Imagine a country once hailed as an unstoppable economic force, a nation whose GDP skyrocketed, whose companies ruled the global tech and automotive industries, and whose wealth inspired envy around the world. Now imagine that same country plunging into an economic abyss so deep that it has struggled to recover for over 3 decades.
Oh my God.
What happened to Japan, the economic miracle? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking truth behind Japan's economic collapse. From the bubble burst of the 1990s to its current challenges. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll see why Japan's economy isn't the powerhouse you think it is. Welcome back to our channel, your ultimate guide to exploring the world's untold stories and hidden truths. Today, we're diving deep into the economic mystery of Japan, a country that once soared to the top but now faces stagnation and decline. What caused this dramatic shift? Was it government policies, cultural norms, or something even more sinister? Stick around as we break it all down. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated on more fascinating stories from around the globe. Let's rewind to the 1950s. Japan, recovering from the devastation of World War II, seemed an unlikely candidate for economic dominance. Yet by the 1980s, it was the second largest economy in the world. How did this happen? The Marshall Plan wasn't just a lifeline, it was the foundation of Japan's rebirth. The US, fearing the spread of communism in Asia, saw Japan as a critical ally. Billions of dollars flowed in, funding infrastructure, factories, and schools. Alongside financial aid, the American-led occupation introduced reforms that broke up feudal systems and redistributed land. This democratized wealth and empowered farmers, creating a solid base for domestic consumption. Industrial policies also played a crucial role. The government directed resources to strategic sectors, prioritizing steel, automotive, and electronics industries. By protecting these industries in their infancy and fostering competition among them, Japan created global champions. Japan adopted an export-oriented strategy that relied on producing high-quality goods at competitive prices. Companies like Toyota revolutionized manufacturing with techniques like the just-in-time JIT system, reducing waste and enhancing productivity. This allowed Japanese cars to flood international markets, offering unmatched reliability and efficiency. Electronics were another crown jewel. By the 1970s and 80s, brands like Sony, Panasonic, and Sharp were synonymous with cutting-edge technology. From the Walkman to color televisions, Japanese products became household staples worldwide. The philosophy of Kaizen, or continuous improvement, wasn't just a buzzword, it was a way of life. Workers were encouraged to innovate at every level, from factory floors to corporate boardrooms. This relentless pursuit of perfection became a hallmark of Japanese manufacturing. Then there was Keiretsu, the intricate web of corporate alliances. Companies like Mitsubishi and Sumitomo formed networks that shared resources, risks, and rewards. This collaboration fueled resilience, enabling firms to weather economic storms and maintain steady growth. The results were staggering. Japan's GDP soared and its global influence expanded. Tokyo's Ginza district became a symbol of affluence, and Japanese firms began buying up iconic assets abroad, from Hollywood studios to New York's Rockefeller Center. There was even talk that Japan might surpass the US to become the world's largest economy. But behind this glittering success lay unsustainable practices that would soon unravel. The 1980s were indeed golden years, but they laid the groundwork for one of the greatest economic collapses in modern history. By the late 1980s, real estate prices in Japan had reached absurd levels. A plot of land in Tokyo's prime districts was worth more than entire countries. For example, the Imperial Palace grounds were valued higher than all of California. Companies and individuals poured money into property, convinced that prices would never fall. It wasn't just real estate. The stock market was equally overheated. The Nikkei 225 soared to an unprecedented high of nearly 39,000 points in December 1989. Speculation was rampant, with many investors borrowing heavily to buy stocks, creating a debt-fueled spiral. Japanese banks, flush with cash, handed out loans with little scrutiny. Land and stock were often used as collateral, further inflating their prices. This created a feedback loop. Higher asset prices led to more lending, which pushed prices even higher. Then came 1990. The Nikkei began to plummet, wiping out trillions of yen in wealth. By 1992, the index had fallen by over 60%, and real estate prices were in free fall. The bubble had burst, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Did you know? It took over 30 years for the Nikkei to climb back to its 1989 peak, a stark reminder of the long-lasting damage caused by the crash. The early 1990s were brutal. Banks were left holding mountains of bad debt, leading to a credit crunch. Businesses couldn't access funding and consumer spending plummeted. The economy ground to a halt, ushering in what would later be called the lost decades. The government and the Bank of Japan struggled to respond effectively. Interest rates were slashed, but it was too little, too late. Fiscal stimulus packages were rolled out, but much of the money was wasted on inefficient projects. Meanwhile, deflation took hold, further discouraging investment and spending. Japan's rigid corporate culture, once a strength, became a liability. Lifetime employment systems and seniority-based promotions stifled innovation and adaptability. Small businesses, which make up a significant portion of Japan's economy, found it especially hard to survive. While Japan stagnated, countries like China and South Korea emerged as new economic powerhouses. Japanese companies burdened by debt and outdated practices struggled to compete on the global stage. Even today, Japan grapples with the legacy of the bubble. Public debt has soared to over 240% of GDP, the highest among developed nations. An aging population and declining birth rate add to the challenges, shrinking the workforce and increasing the strain on social services. Japan's economic troubles are far more complex than mere statistics. They're intricately linked to the country's deeply rooted culture and policy decisions that have shaped its modern economy. The culture of risk aversion is a hallmark of Japanese business practices. In a world where innovation and adaptability drive success, Japan's companies have often favored stability and predictability. This conservative approach has meant that while global competitors have surged ahead with cutting-edge technologies and breakthrough products, Japan has lagged behind. The reluctance to take bold risks has limited the country's ability to capitalize on new industries like information technology, biotechnology, and digital services. In a rapidly evolving global marketplace, this resistance to change has resulted in Japan's economic decline, as it struggles to keep up with nations that embrace technological disruption. One of the cornerstones of Japanese corporate culture is lifetime employment. While this practice offers job security for older generations, it stifles labor market mobility, making it harder for younger workers to climb the career ladder or find opportunities in more dynamic sectors. The rigid hierarchical structure in the workplace also discourages fresh ideas and talent from rising through the ranks, as employees are often expected to adhere to seniority over merit. This policy, initially established in the post-war era to maintain social stability, has become a double-edged sword. While it offered stability for decades, it now acts as a barrier to economic flexibility and youth innovation. The long-term consequence of this practice is a workforce that is less adaptable to change, exacerbating Japan's struggles with economic stagnation. Despite Japan's reputation for technological and industrial prowess, it still lags behind many other developed nations in terms of gender equality in the workplace. Women in Japan face significant challenges in achieving career advancement, with deeply entrenched societal norms and corporate practices limiting their opportunities. Japan has one of the lowest female workforce participation rates among industrialized nations, with women often sidelined in higher-paying roles or leadership positions. This underutilization of female talent hampers Japan's economic growth and potential. In a country that prides itself on efficiency and productivity, failing to fully tap into the skills and potential of half of its population is not just a social issue, it's a significant economic handicap. As we move into the present day, Japan continues to wrestle with persistent issues that are undermining its economic future. Japan's fiscal health is in dire straits, with a national debt that exceeds 250% of its GDP, the highest of any developed nation. The government's reliance on borrowing to finance economic stimulus measures, along with the cost of maintaining an aging population and social welfare programs, has led to an unsustainable level of debt. While Japan's debt is largely held domestically, its long-term effects are far-reaching. The government's spending habits and fiscal policies will eventually have to be addressed as the debt burden grows heavier, placing a significant strain on future generations. In the 1980s, Japan was a global leader in technology and innovation, with companies like Sony, Toshiba, and Panasonic at the forefront of consumer electronics and manufacturing. However, in recent years, Japan has fallen behind in critical areas such as artificial intelligence, software development, and digital transformation. While other nations, particularly in Silicon Valley, have surged ahead with digital innovation, Japan has struggled to modernize its approach. The country's once dominant position in global tech is now under threat as its industry lags behind in adapting to the digital age. For a country that prided itself on technological prowess, this decline marks a significant turning point, as Japan risks being left behind in the fourth industrial revolution. Japan's economy remains overly dependent on exports, particularly in sectors like automobiles and electronics. While this has been a cornerstone of its economic success in the past, it also makes Japan vulnerable to global trade tensions and fluctuations in international demand. The trade war between the US and China, for example, has put Japan in a precarious position, as it relies heavily on both countries for its exports. This over-reliance on foreign markets has limited Japan's ability to diversify its economy or foster greater domestic consumption. As global trade becomes more unpredictable, Japan's export-dependent economy faces significant risks. And then, there's the issue that looms large over Japan's future: its declining population. By 2050, it's projected that Japan's population could shrink by over 20 million people, leading to a dramatically smaller workforce and an even more strained social safety net. With fewer young people to contribute to the economy and support the aging population, Japan's economic outlook grows increasingly uncertain. The societal shift caused by this demographic decline will have wide-reaching effects on everything from consumer behavior to healthcare and pension systems. If Japan cannot find a way to adapt to these demographic changes, the consequences for its economy could be severe. Why didn't Japan see the bubble forming? This question begs an exploration into the economic mindset of the country during the 1980s and the missed opportunities for early intervention. What went wrong with Japan's recovery plans? Here, we dive into the post-bubble era, examining Japan's failed strategies for economic revival and why its recovery efforts were not enough to restore long-term growth. Could Japan's culture be its biggest obstacle? A deep dive into how Japan's conservative culture, focused on stability, hierarchy, and risk aversion, may have contributed more to its economic woes than we first thought. Japan's economic story is both a cautionary tale and a reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. From meteoric rise to prolonged stagnation, it's clear that even the most successful economies are not immune to collapse. What do you think Japan should do to turn things around? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And stay tuned for our next video, where we explore another nation's untold economic struggles. See you next time.